Picture this, a ship so massive it could fit 2 football fields and still have room for your neighbor's pickup. That's the K-Asian Beauty, basically a floating parking garage that hauls thousands of cars across oceans. But here's the twist. Managing this sea beast isn't as simple as load 'em up and sail away. Nope. Behind the scenes, it's a high-stakes ballet of tugboats, logistics teams, and yes, border patrol agents swarming like flies the moment it docks. So today, we're diving deep into how this automotive Noah's Ark stays afloat, stays legal, and stays out of trouble. Oh, and stick around, because there's a cautionary tale involving a ship that didn't quite nail the landing. Now let's talk about the K-Asian Beauty itself. This thing isn't just big, it's comically, ridiculously large. We're talking about a ship that's 604 feet long, basically the length of 2 football fields. Oh, and it's 100 feet wide. It's like a floating skyscraper that just happens to be full of Ferraris, electric trucks, and who knows what else. Honestly, if this ship were any bigger, we'd need to start calling it a country. And to move all this metal, you need some serious power. Enter the MAN B&W Model 6L60MC engine. This bad boy churns out about 14,000 horsepower. For comparison, that's more power than a lot of sports cars, combined. But hey, when you're dealing with a ship that could swallow a small village, you need all that horsepower just to get it to go anywhere. Now, let's talk about height. The K-Asian Beauty stands as tall as a 12-story building above the waterline. So, if you're wondering how this floating giant manages to stay afloat while carrying tons of cars, well, it's all about balance. They've perfected it with ballast tanks and systems that keep the ship from toppling over like a house of cards. Though I'm sure if you were aboard, you'd prefer it didn't feel like one wrong turn could send it into the deep blue, right? So, what happens when this floating mega garage finally reaches its destination, say the port of San Diego after a 2-week trek from South Korea? You might think it just parks, like a minivan at the mall. Yeah, not even close. Docking a ship like the K-Asian Beauty is more like choreographing a Broadway show, only with tugboats, pilots, and a whole lot of yelling over radios. First, a team of harbor pilots, basically the MVPs of maritime GPS, climb aboard to guide the ship through the tight turns of the harbor. These folks know the local waters better than most people know their own neighborhoods. And then come the tugboats. Those small but mighty helpers that push and pull this steel behemoth like it's a toddler in a stroller. Except this toddler weighs around 20,000 tons and can crush a dock if it comes in too hot. No pressure. Now, once it's finally aligned with the berth, precision is everything here. It meets a row of fenders. Think of them as giant cushioned bumpers that say, "Hey, don't dent the ship," or the dock. Then, thick mooring lines are tossed out and secured to bollards, those chunky metal posts you've probably seen near Navy Pier. They hold the ship steady against waves and wind like bouncers holding the line at a sold-out concert. And while all this is going down, they're constantly checking tide levels, wind speeds, current direction, just a few casual variables that could completely ruin the day if miscalculated. Welcome to the high-stress world of docking something the size of a skyscraper. Easy, right? Okay, so the ship's finally docked. Time to kick back and unload, right? Wrong. The moment the K-Asian Beauty ties up, border control swarms it like it's the finale of a reality show. Clipboards out, gloves on, flashlights ready, they've got work to do. First up, paperwork. Border agents go straight for the ship's manifest, which is basically a giant receipt listing every car, every crate, every random item on board. Think TSA, but for a floating parking lot. And yes, they absolutely do a physical walkthrough. We're talking decks upon decks of cars. It's like inspecting every vehicle in a 10-story garage to make sure the paperwork matches. Sounds tedious? It is, but here's why it matters. Back in 2015, in Kenya, officials cracked open some military vehicles on a cargo ship and, surprise, found guns and drugs stashed in the tires. That little party trick didn't go unnoticed, so now if anything even looks shady, the agents flag it faster than you can say smuggling operation. And it's not just the cargo under scrutiny. Every person on that ship, scrutinized. Immigration authorities check that the crew has proper documentation and that no one's being forced to work under shady conditions. This falls under the Maritime Labor Convention, a global rulebook to make sure crews aren't being treated like disposable parts of the engine room. Oh, and let's not forget the environmental inspectors. They're the unsung heroes making sure ships don't just casually dump sewage or oil into the ocean. They'll check everything, from fuel tanks for leaks to whether the ship's garbage disposal system is up to code. Because nothing says, "Welcome to America," like a surprise waste audit at the dock. Let's talk about something that sounds boring but can literally destroy ecosystems. Ballast water. Yeah, I know. Seawater in a tank doesn't exactly scream drama, but hear me out. Ballast water is what helps a ship like the K-Asian Beauty stay balanced. Think of it as nature's counterweight. You load cars, you adjust the ballast, You unload cars, you adjust it again. Simple, right? Except it's also the unintentional Uber service for invasive species. Ships take on ballast water in one part of the world, say coastal Korea, and dump it out in San Diego. And guess what sometimes comes along for the ride? Tiny aquatic hitchhikers. Enter villains like zebra mussels and Asian green crabs. Critters that can completely wreck local marine ecosystems faster than you can say ecological disaster. So now there are strict international laws on how and where you can release ballast water. Inspectors check that the ship's ballast systems aren't leaking, that everything's sealed properly, and that treatment systems are in place to zap anything living in that water before it gets dumped. And that's just one part of the ship's environmental checklist. Inspectors also verify waste handling, sewage, garbage, even oily water from the engine room. Ships are required to either treat it on board or store it until it can be responsibly disposed of. Because nothing says global trade like hauling a few thousand cars and a tank full of poop. All right, now we get to the fun part, loading all those cars onto the ship. It sounds simple, just drive the cars on, right? Yeah, if only it were that easy. This is like playing Tetris on hard mode, with 7,000 cars and a moving platform. So here's the deal. Each car has a designated spot, but it's not a free-for-all. Logistics teams carefully map out where each vehicle goes based on height, weight, and size. Taller SUVs need more vertical space, so they get placed on higher decks. Smaller sedans, they can squeeze into the lower decks where there's less headroom. So no, your Tesla isn't just casually thrown in anywhere. It's got a spot that's been pre-planned months in advance. And then there's weight distribution. This is where it gets even more fun. You've got to think of the ship like a giant balance scale. Heavier cars, like trucks or electric vehicles with those enormous batteries, are placed closer to the center of the ship, where they have the least impact on stability. Because if the weight's off even a little bit, this ship could start tipping like a toddler on a seesaw. And trust me, no one wants to see a massive ship rocking back and forth in the middle of the ocean. But wait, there's more. Not only do these cars have to be placed in their specific spots, but they also need to be secure. We're not talking a parking brake here. We're talking high-tech straps, chains, and wheel chocks that prevent the vehicles from sliding around. You know, just in case the ocean gets a little moody. It's like the worst game of Jenga you can imagine. One misstep and bam, a car's sliding off, hitting other cars, and suddenly you've got a 20,000-ton disaster waiting to happen. All right, let's talk about what happens when things don't go according to plan. And I don't mean like, oops, I left my coffee on the roof of the car. I mean full-blown, multi-million-dollar maritime disaster. Enter the MV Golden Ray. This ship was a heavy lifter, literally. Capable of hauling over 4,000 vehicles across the sea, the Golden Ray was a roll-on, roll-off car carrier just like the K-Asian Beauty. On paper, it was a powerhouse. In practice, not so much. In September 2019, while leaving the port of Brunswick, Georgia, something went very wrong. The ship started tilting, slowly at first, then quickly. Within moments, it rolled over completely, coming to rest on its side in St. Simon's Sound. That's right, a 650-foot car carrier just flopped, like a capsized rubber duck. So what happened? The official investigation pointed to a deadly combo: improper ballast water adjustment and uneven cargo loading. In other words, the ship's internal weight distribution was so off balance, it became top-heavy and unstable. When it hit a sharp turn during departure, gravity took over. Game over. But the real mess started after the capsizing. The Golden Ray was carrying 4,200 vehicles, each filled with fuel, oil, coolant, and more. Add 24 full fuel tanks, and you've got yourself an ecological ticking time bomb. Leaks began seeping into the surrounding waters, threatening marine life and nearby ecosystems. Salvage crews couldn't just tow it away, so they brought in the VB-10,000, a massive dual crane system, and literally sliced the ship into 8 pieces using a diamond-encrusted chain. Yes, like something out of an underwater Fast and Furious spin-off. Each slice had to be lifted with precision to avoid fires, spills, and further chaos. The final bill? Over $1 billion and nearly 2 years of painstaking cleanup. The lesson? Ships don't just flip over for fun. The golden ray is now studied in shipping circles as a textbook case of how cutting corners or simply miscalculating ballast can quite literally turn everything sideways. So yeah, when we say check your weight distribution, we really mean it. Managing a ship like the Asian Beauty isn't just about a powerful engine and a big parking lot. It's a precise balancing act of engineering, regulations, and logistics. One misstep, like improper ballast handling and disaster strikes, just ask the Golden Ray. These mega carriers rely on expert coordination to stay upright, from docking to loading thousands of cars with precision. So next time you see one at port, remember, behind the scenes, it's not just about size, it's about planning, precision, and avoiding a billion-dollar belly flop.